Hey there, so altruism, or taking care of those that can't take care of themselves. I firmly believe that this is a tenet for an advanced or progressive society. And when I talk about progressive, I'm not talking about Mafifi's identity politics. I'm talking about true advancement of society. You know, as you see technology heralding a new dawn, as you see people moving forward day after day, those people that are marching forward, something that says you are truly advancing, is also the ability to reach back and to help those that can't help themselves move forward with you. We're talking about the physically or the mentally impaired, the elderly or children, people that truly need this. Now, to Comicsgate credit, I think that there are a lot of people out there that really involve themselves in this. We saw Ethan Van Sciver, for example, give $10,000 to charity off of his last Cyberfrog event. We saw Richard C. Meyer give $10,000 as well. I've heard people talking about the charities they've been involved with, even outside things, you know, that we involve ourselves with. Like, say, Alterna, for example, who is not Comicsgate, but still, they go out and they advance this kind of idea through giving to charity and helping out. Now, the reason that I bring this stuff up is because I'm going to talk about a specific person. I'm going to talk about KS, and I'm going to talk about what they've tried to do to Ethan Van Sciver and how he, to his credit, was talking about trying to help them out. Unfortunately, this person here, this is not their first rodeo. In fact, a precursory glance showcased 6 items wherein they've tried to do this before. They have asked for money, all the while balling up that proverbial fist, decrying people as Nazis, and trying to take away the very thing that would allow you to help others out. You know, that type of person there, that poison pen, well, you really have to ask if you want to help that person anyhow, even if it was their first rodeo. But when they've done this over and over again, yeah. On top of that, too, I'm going to showcase their Kickstarter that they did not pay off. I'm not going to talk about that at exhaustion, but I am going to talk about it at least in detail to add it to a portrait of who this person is. So Comic Artist Pro Secrets posted, "My enemies are absolute liars and terrible at adulting. This dude spent 2 years trying to use his job as a comic journalist to make my family homeless out of hate. I've never met him. Ask us for help." Now, you see that he's reposting an image that is actually connected to this. This is saying, hey, you know, myself and her, we're actually having a housing crisis. So here's the idea behind it. So we're in a bit of a pickle. Due to a mistake on our part of our letting agency, they haven't been receiving our rent for the past 3 months. We've been working with them and the bank to get it sorted, but today received a court summons requiring us to pay the full amount owed plus legal fees. This wouldn't be too much of a problem, except that our landlord has decided to sell the house and we need to look for a new place to live as soon as possible, but no one will accept an application from us until this is sorted. £3,000 is the full amount we need to pay everything off and getting our letting agency, whose fault this is, off our back. We don't expect to raise the full amount, but any help that you can provide during this stressful time would be greatly appreciated. Now, you see the excuse for this, and the reason that I throw this out there is because it's someone else's fault, because it always is. And meanwhile, you know, you're asking other people to go in and to shore things up. Other people's fault, other people's responsibility. Now, the person that's talking about that, Ethan Van Sciver, say again, this was the guy's first rodeo. You know, we are talking about someone that this guy has decided he would target relentlessly. He targeted him based on this too. And really, it's not the reason he targeted him, as you'll notice within other statements that I'm going to showcase here. But this was used as a weapon. So in 2007, Ethan Van Sciver made a sketchbook with Space Hitler. Across the top, he put "My Struggle." Now, we'll totally ignore the idea that there are other sketchbooks out there that talk about things like communism. We'll totally throw that out of our headspace and go and say, this is the only one. Is this some kind of crime? I mean, if we're talking about, say, work out there that have done by comedians, do we hold them to the same standard? Do we go and also decry a Mike Mignola for creating, you know, a Hellboy that goes out and fights Nazis too, when he actually actually depicts a cover that says it has a Nazi on the front. Is that praising Nazis too? But you see this, and then you see the signature here, one that harkens back to Iron Maiden, and even that has been attacked by other people. You know, Rich Johnston, for example, put out an article saying, no, this guy isn't a Nazi, but he uses problematic imagery because that type of music, well, they love Nazi imagery. So you can even see how that's set together. But this guy here, he's the worst of them all. Why? Because on the day when someone died in Charlottesville, he went out of his way to connect Ethan Van Sciver through that sketchbook to this event. You can see the overlapped image here. This wasn't actually his doing. This is actually in the Nick Monroe journal that he put together for that. I think he did an excellent job too. You can find that out there pretty easily. It details a lot of what had transpired, but it showcases this comment that came out on the same day. He's trying to connect the two events. You can hear it in this, and I'm going to read this over because I think it's important to really cover. I know it's my own bugbear, and there's larger Nazi-related stuff to worry about, but I would love it if DC Comics fired Ethan Van Sciver. Like, obviously, I know that what's going on right now is infinitely more important, but I'm an ocean away and feeling helpless all the time. Ethan Van Sciver is an artist who often collaborates with DC's chief creative officer and is either a Nazi or thinks Nazi imagery is cool. I don't want to piggyback on a tragedy, but you gotta love that caveat, but I'm going to utilize this tragedy for my own means. But if you're going to fight Nazis, you should start with your own community. Every time I mention Van Sciver's use of Nazi imagery, there's always people for whom it's new information, so I'll keep banging on about it. We should be talking about Ethan Van Sciver's Nazi affiliation as often as we talk about Berganza being a harasser. You notice he becomes like Nazi affiliated through this stuff, you know, because again, he drew a sketchbook. At every opportunity, they should be talking about it. Ethan Van Sciver put out a sketchbook titled My Struggle, Mein Kampf, with Space Hitler on the cover and a swastika for a signature. Kick Nazis out of comics and everywhere else. Yeah, so you see that wonderful, wonderful statement. He's also gone on, and he's actually tried to credit him with something he didn't make to make this kind of stuff worse, even though he was showed credit otherwise. He has gone out to attack him, you know, wherein this is actually an instance where Ethan Van Sciver was lambasted because he was targeted by someone out there. Guy targets him and his family, decides that he has been rebuked within it. When that guy is rebuked, oh no, you know, of course it's Ethan Van Sciver. He's a monster. And this person, of course, spins that narrative. Within this, we saw examples of collusion wherein this guy got together with Asher Elbine and they tried to put together something that would destroy Ethan Van Sciver's reputation and his vocation. They colluded on a narrative and they pointed the finger and said, yeah, this guy here, KS, he's a victim. He's always talking about being a victim. He wanted other statements from people too, so they could get together and harass the guy because, of course, he votes the wrong way. I mean, ultimately, it's about not walking lockstep and doing your own thing. Here you can see where he's talking about, you know, oh, you're not a bigot, but Fox News, not racist, but number one with racists. He's also gone with the guilt by association narrative, wherein he talked about quality filtering. And within this, you know, he said, I ran quality filter or a block bot on Ethan Van Sciver's page, and it dragged a number of comic creators along with it. But if they're still following him, they're complicit in their silence and inaction. So you can see this lynch mob forming together to attack people that have nothing to do with anything except pushing the follow button. That's what pros need to remember in these discussions too. These people, they will come after you as well. Now within this, you know, of course, while he's doing that, he's having his own problems, and he's talked about this several times. I mean, here he was let go from Comics Alliance, you know, and he was begging for money because they needed a safety net. Or here, you know, he talks about the begged for a sandwich meme. He says earlier this year we got stranded in London, you know, because they went and watched Hamilton and had to spend all the money we had to buy new tickets to get home. We turned to Twitter to ask for help to buying a bit of breakfast since we were stuck there for hours until our bus. So basically, he's talking about, well, people liked me, they gave me money, ha 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 on that. Here too, he's talking about, hey, I need money because you know what? Someone stole my identity. And he's utilized this several times, as a matter of fact. He's held that hand out and he said, hey, why don't you give me money? Because people have taken my identity. I hate to constantly ask for help, but I'm still owed 1,000 plus pounds, not dollars, and stolen by identity thieves. And I'm being stiffed expenses and wages by a job that just fired me, and now our rent is late. We need 650 pounds today, or we're in trouble. Any help is appreciated. Also, we have the housing crisis we just talked about too. Here we have when they moved. This is actually interesting because this was under her name and not his name, but he put it together. I mean, look at the narrative here. Helena and I, so he's talking from himself, but still, he put together a Kickstarter outside of his name, are going on holiday to America, but we're struggling to put the money together for the hostel. Basically need 500 pounds, but we don't want to get something for nothing. So if you pledge, you're going to get blah, blah, blah. So at least they offered something with that, but still they were begging for money. Here's him also begging for money, saying, hey, if you want to go out and you want to help out a good charity, why don't you help out me? As I settle back into freelancing, money's going to be a bit tight. So if you like to put out a little bit of donation, well, here you go. Now, meanwhile, while he's doing all of this, he puts together a Kickstarter, Mossy #1, working with Tracy Shepard. Now, I'm not going to go in depth with this, but if you look at the most recent comments within that, you have people asking for their products. They haven't actually had anything delivered to them. I mean, when looking at this thing too, 266 people that have basically been built out of another 2.5K pounds, within this. People are asking for that. And he said, I was mailing those out around October 2017, stopped going out, stopped replying to anyone. Meanwhile, the person that worked with him, Tracy Shepard, had this to say online. I won't dwell on this, but I did want to address why I came back. Yesterday, KS tweeted about offering to pay an artist for new comic work. You may remember he and I did a Kickstarter for a comic last year. Fun fact, he never paid me or finished mailing the comics. So that's the guy that we're talking about here. We're talking about a guy, again, not his first rodeo within this. Even if it was, I personally would have problems going and giving money to that individual. But after showcasing this again and again, after setting down and trying to get that veritable lynch mob after other people out there, why exactly would you want to help that individual? I do have to commend Ethan Van Sciver on being a better person than this guy, however. He has gone out and he has said, hey, if this guy asked for help, I would have helped him. I would help him regardless. And when you look at this situation, he did try to make Ethan Van Sciver's family homeless. He tried to take money out of his pocket. He tried to destroy his career. He and other people colluded on that. He did guilt by association. And when you look at the wording that he's attaching there, Nazi, the implication is not only that, but we've seen the calls for violence, to punch a Nazi. We know where that narrative goes. So my final thoughts on this, giving to people that need to be supported. When we talk about altruism, we have to make decisions within that too. We have to decide who is deserving of it because we have finite resources. Now, for myself, this person is not someone I would support. And I understand people wanting to be better individuals, but I also know exactly what this looks like to me. I mean, when somebody goes out and they hold out their hand again and again, there are a few things that they could be. They could be utterly incompetent. I mean, that could be part of it. Or it could be much, much worse. And when you put all of this stuff together, well, ask yourself within that, exactly what does this say? I'm curious, would you support this person? I mean, when you look at that, and again, kudos to Ethan Van Sciver, being a bigger person. I think when you see people in need and you want to say, hey, I don't want people to suffer, kudos to anybody that does that. I just think that we have to be smart about that and to realize the type of people that are out there. Number one, are they ever going to actually go out and take care of self? Number two, within this as well, does this change anything? This guy will still be piling on. He'll in fact call it harassment because you went out and you tried to help him. That's the kind of people you're dealing with. Anyway, looking at that, and I'm going to end on this talking about plugging the channel, which I find to be funny, but this guy does not offer anything. When we go out and we look at the fundamental differences here, this guy, he doesn't actually offer a product. He doesn't deliver on a product when he asks for it. For myself, when we talk about the Wrong Think channels and on, considering supporting them, it's because they deliver something. They talk about this stuff. And of course, that's de-incentivized because you can have people like this out there setting a narrative. They set a social narrative wherein they attack individuals repeatedly, and somehow, in some way, they're A-OK. A YouTube would consider them backable. The mainstream media considers them good to go. Meanwhile, people like yourself and myself, if we take to social media, we are deplatformed. We are de-incentivized. So if you want to support channels like this one and on, there are normally links within descriptions. I have 2 links within my description. Consider supporting if you want to. If not, support my like, subscribe, and on as we move forward. When we hit 10K, we're going to have us a nice giveaway. So stay tuned for that. And of course, leave me your thoughts on this because I want to see what you think about it. And again, kudos to you, Van Sciver, for being bigger than a person like this. Seriously, man, when you look at that, kudos to you. Anyhow, thank you.